Sure. So I'll try to keep that simple. Home, it begins with an empty stage and one performer, and by the time the show is ended, you have a 2-story house on stage and maybe 50 people. So it just keeps building and building and building and building. It gets more. A structure appears on the stage, like sort of construction, but a lot of illusion. And at first, it's a stick timber frame, like somebody was beginning to build a house. And then before you know it, like walls appear and they're painted, and furniture appears, and people appear, and people are doing the dance of their everyday life. And you see many different people occupying this house. And most of it is done to music, tango music. And so it's sort of dreamy. It kind of works on you, like you kind of imagine your own life. It's almost like you're seeing it from far away. That's the first half. And by the time that's done, you really have we see that this house is like it feels like we've been seeing it for many generations. The second half is like a party, and the host of this party is actually an audience member. At first, the audience doesn't quite realize that. They just see a new person on the stage, and there's no words really in this whole show. You hear a lot of music, and it's kind of far away, so you see a lot of behavior in this house. That's how you know what's going on. Ordinary behavior. But then another person arrives, and another person arrives, and it's all audience members. We are there too. There's a cast of about 7 people. And we are actually giving them moment-to-moment instructions, telling them what to do and where to go. Also, sometimes there's instructions written on objects. So these people are totally, really unprepared. And by the time we're done, we have brought like about 30 or 40 people up from the audience. And the party starts to change. At first, it's like a new house party, then it's a baby, then it's a birthday, and then a graduation and a wedding and then a funeral. And it becomes like a crazy party. And then, of course, when it's a funeral, things change, and then the whole house kind of starts to fall apart, and you see the end, the people leaving the house, people talking to firefighters. You get the sense that somebody's house burned down, somebody had to leave, somebody was evicted, they lost their house, the bank took their house, everyone leaves. And so at the very end, you just have the house covered in plastic like a ruin, and the wind blowing through the house. Well, maybe I'll say this is that in this very special moment in the show, 2 audience members are given a microphone, and I give them instructions. And so I would give you these instructions as well, which is to draw a small square or rectangle in front of you. And I'll tell you that this square rectangle is the ground plan for the first place you ever called home. Maybe it was a house or an apartment. I don't know. You know this place, but a structure of some kind. Maybe you haven't been there for a very long time. And I would ask you to give us, the audience, using this microphone, a little tour of the house. Like you open up the front door and you go into the first room, and anything you can see, anything you remember, tell us what you see. And so 2 people do this each night, like a duet. And what I think is interesting is, even if you haven't been there for a very long time, because often we ask older people to do this, and we remember with great detail these structures. And I think there's something about our ability to have maps in our head that we're very good at, humans. And the other thing that is very curious is it's very rare that someone just says the architectural details. There's a door, there's a window, there's the wall. Usually they say, there's the door. I was always afraid of this door because my dog, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and that's the window that my sister broke when she was trying to climb a tree. And so these things have stories. And that's what's curious, is that every corner of a space holds some kind of story or memory. And that's actually how we remember them. And it's very hard for people not to launch into these stories. So I urge you, if you're watching this, to go into that house of your mind and think about those stories of the place that you called home. Well, I tell you, we did a lot of improvising. So when we created the show, we improvised. I mean, so much improvisation. And we developed a kind of theatrical vocabulary through the improvisation. And we would do an improvisation around doors or around light or around seasons, but it was always about space and and also because it's 2 floors, trying to figure out, could you keep track of the other people in space, even if you're down below and they're up above. So we just got really, we just built a lot of material, like a lot of material. So when the time came to set a lot of material, we had a lot in our pocket already. And I think there was a great deal of work that was about I think just the poetry of the ordinary. So at one point we watch an older woman wake up at dawn and we see the sunrise, and it's just a big lighting instrument that is going up on a pulley just off stage, and you see the light travel, and that's what it is, but it feels so good because it feels like a sunrise, and all she's doing is waking up, but she's the oldest. She's like in her 70s. And there's something really exciting about seeing somebody in real time get dressed, pee, go downstairs, make coffee. Time just slows down. Yeah, something that comes back again and again, and it always sneaks up, is an egg.
Oh,
And I really love eggs on stage because you know instantly what it is when you see it. And it has a fragility. Like, you bring an egg and everyone's a little bit like, oh, that's a bad idea. Like, an egg means an egg can break. And also it is filled with metaphor, of course. And that I find very funny because it's a very charged object. So I've used eggs a lot, and they also look great. It's this white object. It's just you know exactly what it is when you see it, and it's good for magicians because it fits in your hand in a good way. It's a good object. And one thing is about focus. That sometimes it's exciting to guide the audience's focus, like to a very specific place on stage. And then it's also really exciting, I think, to have multiple points of focus all of a sudden. So much is happening that you can't even keep track. And so you look here, and then suddenly you look over here, and somebody is like swinging from the chandeliers or something. And uh, that I think both have very different emotional responses in an audience. There's something in home that feels almost overwhelmed, and because then all of a sudden the actors are right there with you, and they're asking you to pass lights over your head, and you're really like working with each other to do a task, and the lights are like are happening in the audience. Um, that's really important because we are asking people to get out of their comfort zone. And sometimes even this focus thing is a comfort zone. And when you're suddenly have to look everywhere, you are frazzled, you're uncomfortable. But because everybody is in that same state, it unites everybody into a kind of, it makes you giddy, like it makes you laugh. Um, and the other thing about audience members up on the stage is it feels in that show like the rules keep breaking, the walls keep breaking down. There's no separation between audience and actors. You're not sure, is everybody here part of the show? Am I? What is this? That is very intentional. Um, for all kinds of reasons. Like, for one, I wanted there to be as many different kinds of bodies on the stage. So rather than cast all these different actors, let's just take from the audience. And so you have people, as it's like whoever is in that audience should be represented on that stage. All different ages, races, um, body types, whoever, gender, whatever, it should all be up there. So that feels good because you see ordinary people on the stage and they really succeed. I think we have them, sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're more poetic and poignant, but we take very good care of them. And so they have a good time up there as well. That's also very important. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, that it's almost political, I feel like, because we're trying to make a theater that is surprising. It breaks rules. It's not contained, and keeps asking you to, ask more of all of this than what you've been given. I get into bed and I can't sleep. And I pull the sheet over my head, and then immediately it's a little boy. And I think, you know, people wonder, oh, well, I think first people, they often have like a real, like, oh, they have a reaction. Because until that moment, it's been very slow. And some things have appeared and things have happened, but it's a little like, what am I watching? And then in that moment, suddenly they really like, wait, I have to look at this stage because I just got tricked and I don't want to get tricked again. So part of it is that, and you can feel them change the way they watch. I love that. And then it opens up this space of poetry, because in this place we're going to talk about time, and the rules of time aren't, they're not right, but they feel right. So, like, in these moments, it's like a woman walks out of a door, and when she walks back in, she's 40 years older. And that's how it feels when suddenly when you're towards the end of your life. It's not like it took that long to get there. Suddenly it's like, wait, where did all that time go? It seems like just yesterday I was in my 20s or my 30s, and it is like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about impression and feeling. So it's a way of getting at that feeling, not worrying too much about the physics. Well, I have a couple of answers to that. For one, a lot of these presenters in the international festivals, they know each other. And so they talk to each other and they'll ask each other, what are you programming? And so they might say, well, I'm doing home. And then they'll, oh, you should do that. Okay, I guess I will. So I think that happens a lot. These people are all friends with each other. But I think also these shows, at least I hope, they're fun. They're fun to watch, but they're not just entertaining. There is like a soul there, and there's something. It's saying something about our humanity and what it is to be a person that is a little different. I think then, especially because they're not reliant on the spoken word. Doesn't mean that we don't speak in these shows. It's just that there's no exposition. We're not using speech you could understand these shows if you didn't speak the same language, if we didn't speak the same language. And I think that excuse me, I think that makes it attractive for festivals, because especially an international festival, has people from all over the world coming, and so it kind of celebrates. It sort of celebrates that. Okay, so I have a funny answer, because it's not just one; it's a few things. It sometimes is like this. It's like I had an idea. Let's do a show about home before I knew what we were doing. So, but the first real image was a lot of people on the stage. I knew that's what I wanted. And then I had to figure out how to do that. And so then at some point I thought, they have to be audience members. Okay, how are we going to do that? So one of the first things we did was experiment with giving instructions to people and having them do things, like being in the scene with each other, but you're giving them instructions at the same time, and how to get them to be physically big. So that was a first thing. And another thing was what the exercise I told you about, like draw the square. And I didn't know how it would work, but I knew there would be some moment with audience, a kind of like documentary thing. So I worked a lot on trying to find that language and trying to figure out what I was asking them to do. Those were the first two. But I knew also I wanted to make that house appear. So that was early on. I was playing with a lot of different ways we might do that. And another conversation, we can talk about the magic technique. And I guess another thing was about repetition. So was working with the core group of performers who are also really creators. There's like 7 of us, working with them to find this vocabulary of repetitive, ordinary movement, and how these like movement scores could intermingle one with another. In this show, there wanted to be a math problem, which was really that each thing wants to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it can't get bigger and then smaller. It's like one simple growth spurt. So it was good to start with nothing. That was important. So I knew that we should do that. And there were different times where some designers or people would think like, wouldn't it be easier if maybe the house is already half built? And it was like, nah, let's start with nothing somehow. And I always thought at the end it would be great if we also ended with nothing, like the whole house was flattened and disappeared. But actually, at some point we realized that was really not possible. But also it wouldn't have been good, because the truth is the house is structural. People can stand on it, jump on it. It's impressive, but it's still like a piece of stagery, stagecraft. As soon as it disappears or something, there's something that feels like not, flimsy or not permanent. And the thing about a house is actually that once it's there, it's not easy to get rid of it. It's like there. And so it was important in a way that the house stay there. And so it was more about like finding this kind of look of the house, that it looks abandoned or it looks decrepit or dead. And we found that image by chance, because we were working with this plastic. I love this industrial plastic, and there's many different kinds. And by chance, we just had this really thin plastic. And by chance, we were rehearsing in a space with a ceiling fan, and somebody hit the ceiling fan by accident, and it turned on and it started to pull the air, and it pulled the plastic up, and it looked like the plastic was like reaching out, and it looked very, very ghostly. And so we worked to keep that image. It's the only image like it where there's no people. It's just like objects moving. I don't know. Maybe that life is funny.